take up problem on collisions today, right? And in general, in specific, we'll be taking up a problem on oblique collisions, right? And we'll take an example of a problem based on oblique collision. And hopefully the concept which we'll be applying for this particular question will help you solve other questions on oblique collisions as well, right? So without further ado, let's take up the question. So let me share the screen with you guys. Right, so the question goes as such. So we have a small particle traveling with a velocity v, and that collides elastically with a spherical body of equal mass, right? So it has the same mass as this particle, and it has a radius r, and it's initially kept at rest. The center of the spherical body is located at a distance of rho away from the direction of motion of this particle, right? So this particle is colliding it at a height of rho above its center, right? And we need to find out after the collision happens, what will be the final velocities of both the particles? Right? So this is a classic question on oblique collision. And again, hopefully the concept we'll be discussing over here will be helpful to help you solve other questions on oblique collision as well, right? So let's begin solving this question. So we have a small particle, which basically implies that it's kind of like a point particle over here. And let's assume the mass of this particle to be m, right? And this particle of mass m is moving at the velocity v, and it is colliding with a spherical object which has the same mass, but it's located at distance, same mass, and the radius of the spherical object is given as r. And the other information given over here is center of this sphere is located at a distance of rho away from the direction of motion of this particle. In other words, this particle is colliding the sphere at a distance of rho above its center, right? And both of them have the same mass m over here. And another information which is mentioned in this question is, it's mentioned that the collision which is happening between these two particles is elastic, right? So ultimately what we need to find out is what's the velocity of both the particles after collision. So let me take this as particle 1 and let me take a sphere as particle 2. So we need to find out what's the velocity of particle 1 after collision and velocity of particle 2 after collision, right? Okay, so as I mentioned, there's a problem on oblique collision. So the first thing is to identify, like, how do I know that there's a problem, or how do we know that there's a problem on oblique collision, right? So for that, we need to look at the instant when this particle is colliding with the sphere, right? So let's consider the instant when the particle is colliding with the sphere. So when your particle is colliding, let's say your particle is colliding the sphere over here. I mean, we're taking that instant. So now when this particle collides the sphere, what kind of force would be acting between these two particles? The force which acts when one object is pushing against another, generally, that would be a normal force, right? So we have normal force acting between these two particles right now. Your point particle is pushing the sphere. So from Newton's third law, we know that the sphere will also push back the particle, right? And how does your normal force always act? Your normal force always acts perpendicular to the surface of contact. Your normal force always acts perpendicular to the surface of contact. So in this case, if I have to draw a free body diagram for both the particles over here, depicting where the normal force is acting, right? So what if your surface of contact over here when your particle is colliding with the sphere? We would say that the tangent is your surface of contact over here. Your tangent is the surface of contact over here. So normal force should act perpendicular to the surface of contact. So in this case, the first important point in this problem would be the force exerted by this particle on the sphere would be acting along the radial direction. Right? This particle would exert a force on the sphere in the radial direction. That is, this force is acting towards the center. So why is this force acting towards the center? Once again, when this particle is colliding with the sphere, your surface of contact right now would be the tangent of the sphere, because it's a point particle. So it's basically the tangent at that point. And what is perpendicular to the tangent of a sphere? That would be your radius, right? So we'll say that this normal force is acting along the radial direction, this direction. This particle is exerting a force on the sphere towards the center, right? Then from Newton's third law, we know that if this particle exerts a force on the sphere in this direction, having a magnitude n, the sphere would also exert an equal and opposite force on this particle. The sphere will also exert an equal and opposite force on this particle. So the sphere also exerts a force on this particle along this direction, right? So if I join these two forces now, so this is an action reaction pair, as you can see, this exerts a force n on it, the sphere exerts an equal and opposite force and on it as well. So we have an action-reaction pair over here, right? And your action-reaction pair will always act along a line because they're lying in equal and opposite directions. You'll find that they'll always be acting along a straight line. So this straight line in collision where your forces seem to be acting, we call that as your line of action of force. We call that as your line of action of force. We call that as a line of action of force, right? So in this question, how is your particle moving? This particle was moving with a velocity v in the horizontal direction. So it is colliding this sphere with a velocity v. It is colliding this sphere with a speed v. So whenever your velocity is lying in a different line than your line of action of force. So whenever the velocities of the particles colliding are lying in a different line than the line of action of force, we say that the collision which happens between these particles is an oblique collision. We say that the collision these particles are undergoing over here is an oblique collision, right? So this is your differentiating factor between a head-on collision and an oblique collision. This is a differentiating factor between a head-on collision and an oblique collision. So the first thing to identify whenever you're dealing with any problem in collision is, am I dealing with a head-on collision problem, or am I dealing with an oblique collision problem? And this is how you'll always be able to tell that, right? So once again, if your velocity is lying in a different line, when your velocity is lying in a different line, then the line of action of force. So in this case, your velocity is lying along this line. The motion of the particle is lying along this line, correct? So whenever your velocity of the particle is lying in a different line than the line of action of force, we say that the particle is undergoing an oblique collision. How would a head-on collision look like? Your head-on collision would look this way. Let's say we have the normal cases we are considered till now. We have two blocks, let's say having masses m1 and m2. And this is, let's say this is moving and this is at rest, right? So when this collides with this, when they're colliding with each other, what kind of force once again will they exert on each other? They'll exert a normal force, right? So this will exert a normal force on the first block, will exert a force on the second block in this direction. From Newton's third law, the second block will exert a force on the first block in this direction. So this is your line of action of force in this case. And you see that your velocity is lying in the same line as your line of action of force. That is, it's also parallel to the line of action of force, right? So what kind of a collision would this be? This would be a head-on collision, right? So once again, I hope, so this is one important aspect, identifying whether you're dealing with a head-on collision problem or an oblique collision problem. So if the line of motion of the particle, if the direction of motion of the particle is lying in a different line than your line of action of force, if it's not parallel to your line of action of force, we say that you're dealing with an oblique collision problem, right? So hopefully it's clear that we are dealing with an oblique collision problem over here. So that's the first part of this question. Now that we know that we're dealing with an oblique collision problem, then how do we solve it? So the next step would be to divide the velocities into components. We'll now divide the velocities into components, right? So we'll be dealing with this problem in two directions. We'll take the velocity components. We'll take the velocity components of the particles moving parallel to your line of action of force and perpendicular to the line of action of force. Parallel to line of action of force and perpendicular to line of action of force. And perpendicular to the line of action of force, right? So once you know that you're dealing with a head-on collision problem, once you know that you're dealing with an oblique collision problem, what's the next step? The next step is, now we need to find out anyways what will be the velocity of the two particles after collision. So we'll now divide the velocity of the particle into components parallel to the line of action of force and perpendicular to the line of action of force. So let me apply this step for this particular question. So let me draw a diagram once again. So this was your sphere. The particle is colliding it at a height of rho above its center, right? And now I'm just drawing a random diagram, not at the moment of collision, right? And now we know that the line of action of force, so when the particle is colliding over here, right? You know that the particle will exert a force along this direction. So this was your line of action of force. It is passing through the center of the sphere. So let me abbreviate it as LOAF, line of action of force. And your velocity of the particle was V along a horizontal direction. Your particle had a velocity V towards the right over here, right? So let me take this angle as theta. We'll find out what that angle theta will be equal to. We'll find out all the trigonometric ratios related to this angle later. So if I take this angle as theta, your velocity component of the particle along this line would be equal to V cos theta. and the velocity component of this particle perpendicular to this line will be equal to v sine theta. Will be equal to v sine theta, right? So in other words, again, as I mentioned, the step is find out what will be the velocity components of the particle parallel to the line of action of force and perpendicular to the line of action of force. So here your velocity component of the particle. So you have two particles over here, right? So let me take for the point particle. The point particle, the velocity component parallel to the line of action of force, which I write as v parallel, is v cos theta. The velocity component perpendicular to the line of action of force is v sine theta. Similarly, again, there's another particle also undergoing a collision over here, and that's the sphere. But the sphere is initially at rest. So before collision, and I'm writing this before collision. Before collision. So before collision, the v parallel, the perpendicular component, the parallel component of the particle's velocity along the line of action of force is v cos theta. The perpendicular component is v sine theta. What about the sphere? The sphere had zero velocity, so both its parallel component and the perpendicular component to the line of action of force will be equal to 0, right? So this will be a second step in solving any oblique collision problem. So once you identify it's an oblique collision problem, then you take the components of velocity parallel and perpendicular to the line of action of force. So the velocity component in this case for the particle along the line of action of force, that is parallel to the line of action of force, is v cos theta and v sine theta. For the sphere, it's 0 and 0 along both the directions, as the sphere was at rest initially, right? That's the next step, right? And hopefully the step is also clear. And now the third step would be, let's take the perpendicular component of velocity. Let's take the perpendicular components of velocity. So in this case, the perpendicular component of velocity for the particle was v sine theta, and for the sphere, it was 0. The perpendicular components of velocity in an oblique collision remains unchanged. The perpendicular components of velocity in an oblique collision remains unchanged. So why will a perpendicular component of velocity remain the same before and after collision? So if I only consider this component of velocity now, that is your perpendicular component of velocity, right? Is there any force? So this particle was experiencing a force in which direction? This particle is experiencing a force this way. The sphere was exerting a force on this particle along the radial direction, in this case in the outward radial direction, right? So is there any force acting on this particle along this direction? No, there's no force acting on the particle along this direction. So if there's no force acting on the particle along this direction, the acceleration of the particle along this direction will be equal to 0. The particle will not have an acceleration along this direction. Since force acting along this direction is 0 on the particle, the acceleration of this particle along this direction will also be 0. So the change in velocity of this particle along this direction is 0. In other words, it implies the velocity of the particle remains unchanged. So this is an important concept once again. So this is your third step over here. Your perpendicular components of velocity, and perpendicular components to what? Perpendicular components to line of action of force. In this case, you see that the velocity of the particle, the velocity component of the particle perpendicular to the line of action of force will remain the same before and after collision. And why should it remain the same before and after collision? Because there is no force acting along this direction. There is no force acting along this direction. From this, I can conclude what the perpendicular component of velocity of the particle will be after collision. After collision, for the point particle, V perpendicular will remain the same as it was before collision. So V perpendicular will be equal to V sine theta itself. What about the sphere? Even on the sphere, let's consider the sphere as well now. What will happen to its perpendicular component of velocity? So the force acting on the sphere is also in this direction. There was a force acting on the sphere. The particle will exert a force on the sphere towards the center. So even the force acting on the sphere is along this direction. There is no force acting on the sphere perpendicular to this line. There is no force acting on the sphere perpendicular to this line, which means once again that there will be no acceleration for the sphere along this line. So its velocity component along this direction will also remain the same, right? So hopefully from that, I hope that you guys can conclude that the velocity component of the sphere perpendicular to the line of action of force will remain the same. It was 0 before collision, so it will now remain 0 after collision as well, right? So this was your third step. So let me summarize this again. So first thing was identifying that it's an oblique collision. Second step was dividing your components of velocity parallel to the line of action of force and perpendicular to the line of action of force, right? And then the third step was your perpendicular components of velocity will remain unchanged during this oblique collision. So why will it remain unchanged? Because there's no force acting on that direction. So the velocity of the particle perpendicular to the line of action of force was v sine theta before collision. So it will be v sine theta after collision as well. For the sphere, it was 0 before collision. So it will remain 0 after collision as well, right? So we have dealt with the perpendicular component of velocity now. So now we are left with the parallel component of velocity. So how do we deal with the parallel component of velocity? So we'll deal with the parallel components of velocity like a normal head-on collision. We'll deal with the parallel components of velocity like a normal head-on collision. Like a normal head-on collision. So what do I mean by this? What do I mean by this? So let me now just draw only the parallel components of velocity. Let me ignore the perpendicular components of velocity because we already found that out. Let's now deal with only the parallel components of velocity. So how would your diagram look like if I only had the parallel components of velocity? So once again, your sphere, this is your particle. So let me draw the particle during the collision, right? So the particle was here, let's say. Right? And what velocity did this particle have along this direction? That was v cos theta. That was the velocity component parallel to it. And the sphere had 0 velocity. And this was your line of action of force. The force was acting along this line. So this is how your diagram looks like if we ignore the perpendicular components of velocity. And now we'll deal with this like a normal head-on collision problem, And you can see why we can deal with this like a normal head-on collision problem, because now your velocities are lying along the line of action of force, So how do we solve a normal head-on collision problem? We generally use two equations, that is your equation of conservation of momentum and your coefficient of restitution equation, that is velocity of separation should be equal to E into velocity of approach. But in this case, we can directly take a result which we had derived for an elastic collision. So the velocity of the particles colliding over here are equal. The velocity of the particles colliding over here are equal. So, sorry, I'm really sorry, not the velocity. The mass of the particles undergoing collision over here are equal. The mass of the particles undergoing collision over here are equal. And the particles are undergoing an elastic collision, right? So the mass of the particles undergoing an elastic collision are the same. Then we had derived this result earlier, that is the velocities will interchange. The velocities will interchange. The velocities will interchange, right? So you can use your normal conservation of momentum. You can also use your coefficient of restitution equation to get the answer, right? But in this case here, we can use the shortcut to arrive at the answer pretty quickly over here, right? So when you have two particles of the same mass undergoing an elastic collision, undergoing a head-on elastic collision, their velocities will interchange after collision. So what will the velocities of the particle and the sphere be after collision? The velocity of the particle and the sphere after collision will be, again drawing the diagram, the particle will now have 0 velocity because the velocity of the sphere was 0 along this direction, whereas now the sphere will gain a velocity of v cos theta along the line of action of force, that is parallel to the line of action of force. That is what we mean by the velocities interchange over here, right? The sphere will take up the velocity of the particle will take up the velocity of the sphere. So after collision, the particle will come to a rest along this direction. Its parallel component of velocity will be 0, whereas the sphere will now gain a parallel component of velocity, and the parallel component of velocity which the sphere gains was the velocity which the particle had along that direction initially, right? So finally, after collision, what's the parallel component of velocity for the point particle? The parallel component of velocity for the point particle will be equal to 0, whereas for the sphere, parallel component of velocity will be equal to v cos theta. Now we have dealt with the parallel component of velocities as well, right? So how do we deal with parallel component of velocities in an oblique collision? We'll treat it like a normal head-on collision over here. After we have dealt with the perpendicular components, we're now dealing with the parallel components right now, right? And we'll just draw the parallel component diagram, and you see that it looks like a normal head-on collision problems which have been solving till now, right? So using the concepts of normal head-on collision over here, in this case, both the particles have the same mass, so we could directly conclude that the velocities will interchange over here. So without using your equation of momentum and without using your equation of coefficient of restitution, we can directly conclude what the velocities will be. If they were different masses, you'll use your equation of conservation of momentum and coefficient of restitution to arrive at the answer, right? And now that we have found out both the parallel and perpendicular components of velocity, the final step would be to combine the components. The final step is to now combine the components, right? So now we know both the parallel and the perpendicular component of the point particle after collision. What was the parallel component of this particle after collision? After collision, this did not have a parallel component of velocity at all. Its parallel component of velocity was 0. And what was its perpendicular component of velocity? This is your velocity of the particle after collision. This is the velocity of particle after collision. It had a velocity perpendicular to the line of action of force, and that is equal to v sine theta. And what about the velocity of the sphere after collision? The velocity of the sphere after collision, as we saw earlier, so its perpendicular component of velocity is 0. It did not have a perpendicular component of velocity, or it does not have a perpendicular velocity component of velocity after collision, but it will have a parallel component of velocity now. We found out that parallel component of velocity to be equal to v cos theta. So this is the velocity of the sphere after collision, right? And now it's a matter of getting the answer according to the information given in the question, right? So theta was something which we assumed over here. So if we go back to the diagram, or let me draw the diagram over here. What did we take the angle theta as? We took this angle as theta. We took the velocity over here. This was your angle theta. Right? So now we need to find out what is cos theta and sin theta for this angle theta over here, right? So we can imagine a right angle triangle in this manner. We can imagine that there's a right angle triangle in this manner. And we know what this height is, as the information given in the question was, this particle is colliding with this sphere at a height of rho above its center, right? And we know that this length should be equal to r. So from this right angle triangle which we have over here, we see that sin theta should be equal to rho by r. And if we know sin theta, we know what cos theta will be equal to. That will be equal to under root of 1 minus sin squared theta. So the under root of 1 minus rho squared by r squared. And now that we know what sin theta and cos theta are, we can finally conclude what the velocity of the particle and the velocity of the sphere is according to the information given in the question. So velocity of particle after collision will be v sin theta. So that will be equal to v into rho by capital R. Whereas what's the velocity of the sphere after collision? That was equal to v cos theta. So that will be equal to v into under root of 1 minus rho squared by r squared. Into under root of 1 minus rho squared by r squared, right? So this will be a final answer, and this will be a velocity of particles, or this will be your velocities of the particle and the sphere after collision, right? So summarizing this again. So what were the steps we had taken to solve this question? So generally, when you take up any question in collision, the first question you'll be trying to answer is, am I dealing with a head-on collision or am I dealing with an oblique collision? So how do you answer that question? Draw a free body diagram for how the situation looks like during the collision, right? So during the collision, we see that the force which this particle exerts on the sphere will be along the radius, right? Because we know that normal force should act perpendicular to the surface of contact. So this was your line of action of force, and your velocities, the velocity of the particle was in a different line than your line of action of force. This was a line of motion, whereas this is your line of action of force. So whenever your line of motion of the particles is different from your line of action of force, we can conclude that we are dealing with what kind of case? We're dealing with an oblique collision case. So that's the first part, identifying whether it's an oblique collision or a head-on collision. And now, after we had identified that this was an oblique collision problem, what was the next step? Take the velocity components parallel to the line of action of force and perpendicular to the line of action of force, right? So this was the velocity of the particle. So we took its components parallel and perpendicular to the line of action of force. So the velocity of the particle parallel to the line of action of force was v cos theta. Perpendicular was v sin theta. For the sphere, both were 0, as the sphere was at rest. And then what happens to your perpendicular components of velocity? The perpendicular components of velocity will remain unchanged. Why will the perpendicular component of velocity remain unchanged? Because there's no force acting along that direction. Your force is only acting along the line of action of force. Your force is not acting perpendicular to it. So then after collision, what will be a perpendicular component of velocity for the point particle? It was same as what it had previously before collision, right? So this velocity component will remain unchanged. So for the point particle, it remains as v sine theta itself. And for the sphere, it remains as 0 itself. And how do we deal with the parallel component of velocity? Your parallel component of velocity, you will treat it now like a normal head-on collision problem. So again, just drawing your parallel components of velocity, your sphere had 0 velocity before collision. The particle had a velocity component v cos theta. And now you'll solve it like a normal head-on collision problem. So there's a normal head-on collision elastic problem where you have two particles of the same mass undergoing an elastic collision, right? And we know that in a normal head-on collision problem, when the mass of the particles are same, the velocities will interchange. So what will be the velocity of these particles after collision? This had 0, the particle had v cos theta, the sphere had 0. So after collision, the particle will have 0 and the sphere will have v cos theta. So your parallel component velocity for the point particle is 0. For the sphere is v cos theta. And finally, combine both the components. So your particle had 0 velocity in this direction. It had a velocity of v sine theta in this direction. Your sphere had 0 velocity in this direction. It has a velocity of v cos theta in this direction. Finally, from this, we conclude that these are the velocities of the particle after collision. And now we're just writing sine theta and cos theta in terms of the information given in the question. And this will be your final answer, right? So hopefully this question is clear. And this will be the logic you'll apply to solve any question, any oblique collision question as well.